Good morning, everybody. I am Tommy, and you are on the Love Boat. Kristen Melinda, good to see you. Brock Bandy, what's happening? That is South American Johnny Scoville there, Chase the Heat. Good to have you here. Johnny, Grace, Twinkle Toes, thank you for being here this morning. I know the Aldrich sisters are here. Good to see you. Boy, oh boy, what a day yesterday was, folks. If you didn't see any of the shorts, which I put up before passing out and apparently didn't show up until close to midnight or sometime around then. I know because at midnight they lit off an unbelievable fireworks display about 7.5 feet from our balcony. I'm exaggerating, but not by much. It was really right down onto the beach directly in front of where we live. And it woke up the entire house. Arwa, good to see you. Hey, Ashley G, good to see you here. Good morning. If you did see the shorts that I did yesterday, that's how a short ought to represent the Love Boat. What may I do? It may not be such a great idea. I'm pretty happy with how I did it my damn self. Kevin Hawthorne, Lakeland, Florida. Good to see you, my brother. Always an honor. So here's the deal. Yesterday, we went out to the rehab center for sort of the christening of the new building. Now, realistically, it's probably going to be about another maybe week before everybody is moving into it. That roof that you saw needs to have about 1 inch of concrete poured on the top of it, and then they put a thing over the top of that. It was kind of odd to hear them say it, but David, the guy that runs the facility, said they're not quite ready to move anyone in just yet. The reason being they could easily break through the ceiling. And at 2 o'clock in the morning, when you're in the throes of dope sick, you'll rip through a ceiling. I've said a million times, when I was in the hospital, Linda, good to have you here. I was in the hospital, and it was the time that my probation officer said to me, take the pain meds. We'll help you get off of it, whatever. Before I knew he was there, because I was behind a curtain, and the woman came in and said, this is morphine. It's going to make all the pain go away. And I almost bit this woman's head off. If I could have swung at her, I would have. But at the time, one half of my body wasn't working very well. I just had a full-blown stroke. And she said, what's the big deal? I said, the big deal is I'll crawl out of here with one arm and one leg to go get dope if you put morphine in my vein. Like, the difference between heroin and morphine is one acetyl molecule, literally, right? You have morphine and you have diacetylmorphine, really nasty stuff. Aren't they able to use Suboxone or Sublocade for the detox? This is not that kind of a country. They don't feel the need to have those in stock the way they do in the United States. And one of the reasons is I had oral surgery where they cut my jawbone, and the what I was given was a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory. You're just not getting pain meds unless you're in an emergency room, and the pain meds that they're going to give you in an emergency room, you're not taking home. If you are really in trouble and you've got a car wreck, they'll give you morphine, but you're not taking home a prescription for pain meds. It's just how this country is. They don't feel that people need it. And if you had told me 3 months ago that I was going to have that tooth removed and not have any pain medication, I'd have laughed at you, because it's not something that I would have thought was a possibility. There's a lot of things that I wouldn't have believed 3 months ago that I believe today. And before the show is over, some of you will think I'm crazier than you thought the other day. You know, a pharmacist in keto. Well, there you go. I know that they are doing something to help with the first 2 days of detox. My guess would be that it's probably a benzo. That's what most of the places in the U.S. use, believe it or not. Hey, Kim, glad you're here. Caroline, how are you? This is, even in the United States, it is far more popular to treat opiate withdrawal with a benzodiazepine than it is with even something like Suboxone, which kind of is the golden Willy Wonka ticket to treating withdrawal. You only have to get to the 24-hour mark, and then you can make it go away. And if you do it just for a 3-day kind of a Band-Aid, the person's still going to go through withdrawal. You're just going to take away the absolute worst of it. Renee B., glad that you're here. Did you guys get a look at the thumbnail? That is Mac. That is the young man that lost his brother and gained 2 in the process, plus the 31 other guys that are there that call him brother. There was a fascinating thing that happened over the course of the weeks that we've been going to this. Every time we show up, I usually speak to the guys. Hey, Barbara, I usually end up speaking to the fellas. Yesterday, there was a whole host of people there to speak. And I was invited to speak afterwards. But I didn't feel like I could add anything. I don't know if that's going to sink in to the rest of you the way it did to me. But I didn't think that there was anything that I could add that was going to make that better. I always think there's something that I can add to make things better. It's kind of the defining characteristic of a public speaker. There we go. But I couldn't add anything. There was literally nothing that I could say that that was going to add to that. In fact, for one of the first times in my life, I felt like if I said anything, I was going to be taking away from what I just saw. Nelson, great to see you. Kim says, I was absolutely amazed at what they accomplished in a week. It was incredible. You know, every time I go back there, that's the takeaway, right? Look at what they've done in a week. It's so breathtaking. And then when you think of the fact that these people are doing this in withdrawal, right? Most of these guys are in active withdrawal, and they're out there mixing cement and laying floors and you know, smoothing concrete and working with rebar and just things that, man, I've kicked dope a lot. I don't know too many people that have been through the process more than me, and not because I was a beacon of rehabilitation, but because I got thrown in jail a lot. And once they understand what's wrong with you, they will go out of their way to make sure that you're not going to get out for that first 72 hours or longer. And they're not doing it to be cruel. I used to think that they were. It's just kind of the United States' way of trying to help you get through what you cannot get through. I just want to be in bed during detox. You and everybody else on planet Earth. Caroline says he's a young man with hope now. He's a happy young man. He looks like he's at 18 months, not 18 days. And they received gifts yesterday from the church that we go to. Gave every one of them sort of a Dob kit. You know what that is, like a male, you know, a kit for all the things you use when you go to the sink before you, you know, shaving and all of that stuff, taking care of your teeth. And he was so hungry. How old is he? 12? No, he's in his 20s. But he looks 12. There really are. There are really, but I'll tell you something. He looks, every time I see him, he looks older. And the first time I saw him, like when I came back and talked about him, I described him as 5'6". Do you see him hugging me? Or do you see him hugging Johnny? He's a hell of a lot taller than 5'6". It's amazing what happens when someone stands up and pulls their shoulders back and starts having a little bit of pride. Hope is needed. It really is. And it may be the greatest gift in the world. If you've ever seen Shawshank Redemption, they talk about hope. And hope being a dangerous thing in some places sometimes. Hope's never a dangerous thing. I spent time incarcerated. Hope is never, ever anything but fantastic. Watching it go away is horrifying. I've talked a lot about my time in Lewisburg. And he does look like a deeply happy person, doesn't he? When I was at Lewisburg, one of the ugliest places on planet Earth, if you've never seen it, Google it sometime when this show is over. Get a look at what Lewisburg looks like. And I was there when it was a special management unit. The speech that you would get when you got there would say, you're the 1% of the 1% of the 1% of the dysfunctional people that can't make it in this country. That's your icebreaker. Their rationale was about 1% of the 3,300,000 people in the United States end up in prison or in jail or behind bars in some way. And at some level of incarceration, about 3 million people. Of that, about 1% of them end up in the federal system. At the time I was there, a little under 250,000 people. And then out of those, 1% get selected to go to the special management unit. And it's because you did something really stupid. You proved that you can't even live under supervision. I hit a cup and it landed me there. But my cellmate had no hope, none. He was a white supremacist who went to prison because he believed he was aiding the gang that he was a member of. He was never a member of the gang. It was the Aryan Brotherhood. I don't usually use their name, but he thought he was in the Aryan Brotherhood. He just had a couple of guys on the street who claimed that they were in the Aryan Brotherhood. They were not. They just wanted stuff from him. And he killed a man to get hundreds of gallons of anhydrous ammonia. He was going to use the anhydrous ammonia to make methamphetamine, sell the meth to make money for the Aryan Brotherhood, and send it to the fellas inside so that they could take care of their families and everything else while they were locked up. This was the theory. It's absolutely bizarre. The crazy thing is this: anhydrous ammonia is not an expensive thing to get. In fact, if you're anywhere near where major farming takes place, this stuff is used in fertilizer massively. So I've never met someone that bought it. You can make it, right? If you have a bit of a chemistry background, it's not a difficult thing to make. It's also not expensive. And the fact that he killed a man to get this, but there was no hope. He had 2 life sentences. The gang that he thought he was a member of, he had a big swastika tattooed on his forearm, which he removed with a razor blade. Like removed. Didn't pick it away or anything else. He cut a divot into his arm. He was one of the most disturbed human beings I've ever met. He chewed the ears off of 2 cellies. He was a very, very disturbed young man. He was in his 20s. Yes, this is a slightly different kind of fertilizer than Tim McVeigh used. That's a really nitrogen-rich stuff. This is just ammonia with no water in it, right? Anhydrous is a term to mean that the water has been removed. So when you see this stuff, it looks like something from a crazy laboratory. Like it's foaming and not foaming, but smoking. It looks like something from a horror movie, or like from a laboratory. Hey, good to see you, Susan. Glad that you're here. Hope Portugal is nice this morning. But this was an awful case, and I had to spend 13 months with this cat. And the negativity from this dude. When I said to him, you can make a life in prison. You can. Q certainly has. You can make a life in prison. Dane Young, glad you're here. Brakes caught on fire in a truck hauling it close to my area and left a crater. Wow, yeah, it is absolutely Vincent Van Gogh cellie. Brock Bandy, clever. This was my cellmate. He and I were locked in a cell together for 13 months, and it was just a difficult person to do time with. And I would try to uplift the cat and say, you can make a life for yourself. You know what I mean? What you got to do is try to get a wish within the framework of where you're at and work toward that, right? Get a goal, something. And he said he's hoping for World War III because he knows that the police would abandon everybody inside. He was the first person I've ever heard say that in prison, by the way, because most people in prison will tell you that there was a bill signed when JFK was in office. By the way, I don't know if there's any truth to this whatsoever, but every inmate on planet Earth will tell you the same thing, that JFK signed a law, allegedly, when in office, that if the ship hit the sand, that it was an order that they could go in and just smoke every inmate they got. I have to believe that it would be different than that, but they all do believe that. Dane, I'm glad that you're safe. Being blasted with negativity all day from right beside you can suck the life right out of you. Barbara, wait, you nailed it. It did. Being inside and having a black hole of negative energy living right next to you is one of the most awful experiences of my life. I remember the day that they shipped him away. First of all, he had spent 7 years in the special management unit and never got to phase 2, right? Every time you get in a fight, every time you get a write-up, they start you out. They call it day 1, phase 1. It's like you just got there. He had been there for 7 years. He's the reason that they had to redo the system. No lie, him. Alone, him. He was the reason that the system got redone. But when they shipped him off, I was alone in a cell for 3 days before I got a cellmate. And that 3 days was some of the most emotional time of my life. It was so mind-bending to be alone and to not have that just absolute suck of negative energy sitting next to you, trying to take any joy that you had in life and remove it. Yesterday, I was at the exact opposite of what that felt like. I was at ground zero of hope. To look at what I put up in the shorts gives people hope. It does. These guys built that hope. When David got to that site, they didn't have running water. How a person could kick dope in a place where you got to carry water in by the bucket is not something I can wrap my brain around, but this place has success like you can't believe. Maybe it's because they take ownership in their sobriety, or maybe it's because they take ownership in what brings them their sobriety. And if you think I'm going with God on this, you're right. But I also mean the facility, right? These guys are out working every day to make where they live better. This is their house, right? This isn't a rehab. This is their home. And when they leave, these people come back, but they come back to donate. They come back to make speeches because they live a life when they leave this place. It's absolutely stunning to me what they've accomplished there. So yesterday, there was a feast afterwards that was really kind of incredible. They really put on a spread for these guys. It was awesome. My bro lives in a sober living house. He does great for 4 months and then relapses. The guy he lives with, auto kick him out. One strike, it seems like he has given up on every time it happens. Yeah, you know what? Really funny too, because they'll sit in that room and they'll say to you, relapse is part of the process. But if you relapse, we're kicking you out. Makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? Relapse is a part of the process, but don't you do it here or we're going to kick you out. Susan says, very hot, forest fire, left, right, and center. Worse, most fires are actually caused by arsonists. Oh, no, man, really? The world we live in is disturbing as hell, is it not? Kim, I'm going to say a prayer for your friend. That's awful, but it's so common. You know, one of my biggest beefs with Narcotics Anonymous. I've told this story already so many times, but you're all stuck listening to my stories many a times. That's kind of the boat. But the first time I ever went to one, lost again. Good to see you. Had a hell of a time getting here. Yeah, you know what? I'm glad that you're here. It's I got to NA the first time I ever arrived, and somebody got to the door right before me, right? Like we were in the parking lot doing this one. And the person at the door said, you're obviously under the influence. You need to leave. It's like going to a cancer center and having them say, you have breast cancer? What are you doing here? It was one of the most disturbing things. I thought to myself, you got to be woofing me. This is how this goes down. Not the kind of place I was just at. Do you think they're just stronger? My parents grew up during the Depression and they were tough. Renee B., I don't believe that. I believe that your parents were tougher. I believe that the people who grew up during the Depression were tougher. I think it hardened them. I think that these men aren't spoiled by things like YouTube. I don't think these men are spoiled by things like social media and the stuff that makes comparison the thief of joy, right? What they had yesterday was a gift. And I think that there's a lot to that. But they also believe in a power that's greater than themselves. And I promise I'm not going to turn this into a sermon, but they believe in a power greater than themselves. And they don't do 12 steps. But there's a reason that one of the steps is that you came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. Because when you're in the throes of addiction, you can't return yourself to sanity. You know what? Feel free. I don't give people this opportunity very often. If you think I'm stupid, put a deuce in the chat. 30 years I did heroin. Couldn't figure out a way to get off of it. I don't feel stupid. I really don't. I don't think I'm stupid. In fact, you've probably not heard me say this before on the channel. I think I'm pretty freaking smart. I'm getting to that point where I believe that. Yeah. But I couldn't get off dope to save my life. Literally could not get off dope to save my life. And I went to $2,000 a day rehabs that people I worked for paid for. I went to $500 a day rehabs. I went to rehabs that were run by the state and treated you completely different. I went to rehabs in prison. I went to rehabs every place you could go to rehabs. And then a black dude in a place that I wasn't allowed to speak to black dudes because white guys would hurt me if I did, helped me get sober, helped restore my sanity. But one of the first things he did was he said to me, you better believe in a power greater than yourself. And I would say to him, so you're a Christian? He said, I didn't say that. To this day, I can't tell you what the guy believes. He can quote the Bible like nobody you've ever met, but he could do the same thing with the Quran. You're given 33 years to read, and it'll give you a lot of time to do a lot of thinking. He didn't want to share that aspect of his life with me, and that's okay. But he definitely believes in a God. Do you find it harder to get sober when living in those situations? They are sober, so I get removing someone from that could be a detrimental to their sobriety, but what can he do that will stop the cycle? He has stopped the cycle. Oh, you mean removing? Here's the thing. No, you're talking about NA. No, you got to bring that person in. You have to bring that person in. What you have to do is kick out the people that don't want to be there. Someone that shows up at the door of a Narcotics Anonymous meeting high needs help. You follow me? That's a person that needs help. And they knew that if they walked to that door without being high, they were going to be doing this one, vomiting on themselves. When AA first started, they used to keep, wrap your dome around this, a half a gallon of gin underneath the sink in the kitchen. And if a guy came in the delirium tremens, 2 alcoholics would sit down with him and give him drinks until he could feel his hands steady enough to listen to what they had to say. This was when nobody believed at all that a person could get sober. This is when the medical community said sober wasn't a possibility. If you're an addict, you're an addict, you die an addict. Keep them away from guns, keep them away from cars, heavy machinery. For the love of God, don't let them babysit. But they didn't believe that it was possible to get someone sober. Concepts like admitting you were powerless over a chemical were not something that people could wrap their dome around back then. There are 2 really powerful ingredients going on at that rehab. Knowing you have your brother backing you up and the physical labor aspect. Nothing makes you feel better than seeing something you built. I agree with you on both counts. What I don't know that I can figure out very well is how you get somebody that's kicking dope to say, I'll give up my bed because the guy that just got here is worse than me. That's not a United States thing, and I'm not hacking on the US. I've just been around a lot of people kicking heroin in my life, thousands of them at this point. And I'll tell you something, people kicking dope care about the person kicking dope. They don't care about anything else on planet Earth. The fact that guys who have less than a week of sobriety are sitting up watching the new guy that just got there to make sure that he doesn't hurt himself during the night, to just be there to put a hand on the dude or to pray with him or do whatever, that to me is mind-bending. That's hope, and I've not seen it in other places. By the way, this isn't my first religious rehab. I have been to Christian-run rehabs multiple times in my life to visit and as a patient. They were the worst sense of what Christianity is. Not the best. And I don't need to describe what is the worst of Christianity because most people it pops to your head instantly. It's usually that person that goes, I'm a Christian. It's usually a Karen you hear on a video, right? As they're dragging her out of Walmart by the hair because she just stuffed her purse with $700 worth of merchandise. And she starts screaming at the top of her lungs, I'm a Christian, like it's a badge that gets you out of trouble or makes you just a little better than the next person. I've been to plenty of those rehabs. They didn't get me sober. It takes a miracle to get sober. It absolutely takes a miracle to get sober. Miracles at the place I was at yesterday are a dime a dozen. You know what else is there? Flying insects that have really gnarly stingers. I think it was a hornet. I'm not is it entomologist? I think it's an entomologist, studies bugs. I'm not sure if it was a hornet. Could have been a wasp. Could have been any number of things. I'm not exactly sure what it is. Lost again says, I steer clear of organized religions for that reason. You know, I used to say the same thing. Currently, I find myself going on Sunday to a very organized religious service that feels a whole lot more like that rehab center than any church I've ever been to. And there's no big cathedral and there's no, stained glass. It's in the backyard of somebody's house, but it's absolutely incredible. Hornets, wasps, am I recovered? I am. They do not use epinephrine in this country. Epinephrine is not popular in this part of South America. Epinephrine is what an EpiPen is, right? It is epinephrine in a pen. So I got stung on my right bicep. You could probably, I don't know, probably because of the tat, you can't see it, but it's really pink and really swollen right there. That's where I got stung. The second sting was on my arm right there. And I didn't know there was a second sting. I was standing with my brother and we were eating and I just went, ah, and I pulled my shirt sleeve out and the thing fell. I don't have any idea how it got me on the forearm, unless it stung me on the forearm first and I didn't, or maybe I just had a reaction. I don't know, but I had a big lump on my forearm and I had one on my bicep. I'm 55 years old. There have been 2 times in my life that I have been stung by a bee and I did not need to go to an emergency room. Both times I happened to be sitting on a pile of stimulants, right? One time I was around a guy that sold methamphetamine for a living. And as opposed to getting in a cab and driving away, I was a drug addict. I sat down at his table and started doing the 10 and 2, rolling a pipe and smoking it one right after the other, thinking it's going to speed my heart up massively. It's kind of what epinephrine does when you take an EpiPen. The other time, I was the dealer, and I was also a very heavy intravenous drug user at the time. I didn't shoot speed. I did it once, and it was a terrifying experience. Nobody warned me what happens when you shoot speed. So I did this shot, and there's a sensation that feels like your lungs are filling with sand. It's absolutely awful. You go, ugh! Like there's this cough that's absolutely horrible. If I would have taken Benadryl like you, I'd still be asleep. Well, this was yeah. I'm not exactly sure what the equivalent medication is down here, but I'll tell you this. I was loopy, right? And my tolerance for drugs is usually considered legendary. I was loopy. Second time, I injected cocaine, took 2 shots, and the stripes on my neck went away, my throat. Yesterday, there weren't any of those options. We went with prayer, and you can laugh at that. But the craziest thing happened on the way home. I was getting a ride home with Gary, who's the pastor at the church that helps sponsor this rehab center. People that showed up, and there was nothing there. And this is what they've been able to get going. And there's running water, and there's electricity, and it's a beautiful place. It really is. And there's pride in everything that those guys do. But on the way home, I said, I got to stop and make sure I get a 6-pack of EpiPens. I don't want to be in a position that this happens to me. I said, obviously there are some pretty rowdy flying insects in this part of the world. And he said, funny, I've only seen them twice. Apparently, I saw them both times he saw them, because Sunday during the church service in the person's backyard, one flew around me for the entire service. It was driving me nuts. It really was. And it had me freaked out. It flew next to a small boy who jumped out of his seat and ran like 6 feet forward at a quiet time during the procession. And his mother looked mortified. That was a little girl. It was a little girl? I apologize. Hope they don't catch that. I hate when I do that thing. You need to get the stinger out. I did, but I didn't get the stinger out until I got home. There wasn't really any equipment to do any of that at the time that I was there. And Johnny Scoville stomped on this thing instantly, so I didn't get a chance to see if it was going to die, and I understand why Johnny did it. But the ones that, if they sting you and leave the stinger in and they get all their stuff out, they're dead. Like, that's a wrap. And that's usually a pretty tough sign. I can chalk this up to any kind of an ending that people want to give it. What I will say is this. I have been going to a doctor because I've been having all kinds of medical problems. And I have had more tests and everything done. There's nothing wrong with me, which is a great thing. However, I have a lot of symptoms that would lead you to believe that there's something wrong with me. Fatigue being one of the worst, where there are days that I can't get up. There are days that, and I don't mean literally, I never lay in bed. I'm not that cat, but where I can't get out of my own way. Like my energy level's at a 2. You drink 3 cups of coffee, there's nothing, and you can't move. Yes, there's rebar throughout. In fact, even the bamboo roofs, Dane Young, are attached with rebar. Even the bamboo roofs attached to the walls with rebar. It's fascinating how the carpentry, right? How the construction goes. It's absolutely fascinating. And normally they bring in a maestro, which is a person at the top of their trade. And it's someone who is a maestro in construction, and they volunteer to work there. They're getting to the points where these guys are capable of doing this without the maestro's presence, which is really incredible. I have a couple of other shorts that I'm going to try to get uploaded. It's been very difficult to upload anything from here. Odd, because we have the most unbelievable upload speeds right now. About 5 times what they were when we first started. They've been through the roof. However, our equipment has been going haywire constantly. For instance, I have had numerous days where I get up and YouTube is deleted off of all of my devices. Here's the crazy thing. I don't put 2 devices on the same email. And the reason for that is if something goes wonky on one of them, I learned in the early days of the lifeboat when I had a computer, a cell phone, and an iPad that were all on the same email. And when something went bad, all of them were worthless. So these days, everything I have has a different email address on it, so that I can still access and go to YouTube and do the things that I want to do. But if I were to get a virus or whatever, it's going to make it more difficult for it to destroy all of this. I was watching a video this morning when the guest speaker began talking about God, love, lightning struck his hotel and knocked out his connection. Something is afoot here. Yeah, something is. I'm not, and you can say I'm crazy. I will happily take it, because if somebody told me this 4 months ago, I would have said that to them. I don't use VPNs in this part of the world. I just don't. But I get up this morning, everything is groovy. I have gotten up in other mornings where YouTube's just gone. I have to go and re-download it on every single one of my devices. That seems odd to me. And you start going down the logical train, right? And you go, well, it could be a hacker. If you can hack into my stuff, all you're going to do is take YouTube off. If you could get into me, like if you're a person that wants to target Tommy Scoville, you would delete my channel, right? You have access to do whatever you want to my channel. You'd put up something foul, right? You would do something horrible. You wouldn't just take the app off of my phone or off of my laptop or off of my iPad. Pretty odd stuff. Pretty odd stuff. But here's the deal. I feel a lot better today than I did yesterday. Last night, it was like a quaalude. I'm telling you, Johnny was having to babysit me. Like I would get up and try to walk and do the Club Babaloo number where the whole room starts shaking and you look like you're dancing, and it was all bad. It was, and you know what's funny? There was a time where I kind of dug that. Dan Young says, I know this is off topic, but I find it funny. 1, Ghislaine is now able to for work release. 2, Epstein is down on Google 96% from 2 weeks ago. Trump is considering rescheduling marijuana. You know, this is worth talking about really quickly. It really is. We've been talking recently about artificial intelligence and whether it's evil or not, implicitly. Artificial intelligence determines what's going to pop up in your live feed. How is it that Epstein is down 96%? Well, if you control Google and you say, no, if somebody types it in, yeah, no, you could type it in. And if what they put up that you look at doesn't grab your attention, you go, oh, this is the same stuff from 8 days ago. People are still making content about Epstein every single day. You're just not finding it. Believe that. There are people who do nothing but Epstein. And I'm talking about for the last 3 years. Then 2 or 3 weeks ago, they became it. My friend, Sean Atwood, has written books about this. He's been talking about Epstein forever, but he started popping up in my feed again. And I hadn't seen Sean in my feed since Diddy. But Sean was in my feed for the last couple of weeks. He's not anymore. Are you telling me he's no longer talking about Diddy? Or is Google not going to let me find him unless I go and find him on my own? Do you see what I'm talking about, folks? You can absolutely avoid having a conversation with artificial intelligence. You can't avoid using it. If you Google something, you've used artificial intelligence. By the way, if you use any of the other ones, DuckDuckGo, there's not somebody in a room with a big catalog going, hey, the guy wants football, flipping through there. Artificial intelligence is driving everything that is going on in our world. But you don't have to have a conversation with it. You don't have to ask it advice. The people that designed it are nefarious. I promise you. I promise you. Even when you hear Elon Musk interviewed about it, and he says, it's going to make the world better than it has ever been, unless it doesn't destroy us. No joke. And he says this without a hint of irony in his voice. I find it fascinating that everybody involved with AI believes that AI is going to see us as a virus, right? That we need to be eliminated from this planet because we are a virus. I happen to believe that that wouldn't be the case if this thing could achieve intelligence, but it's not intelligence. It's a supercomputer. You can call it whatever the hell you want, but it's not thinking. Because if it was thinking, we wouldn't have to worry about that. See, a logical thinking entity wouldn't want to destroy creation. It wouldn't. But it's not thinking. It's being told what to do by a group of people who are inherently evil. By the way, I talked about the bite out of the Apple computer logo. And I said that it kind of creeped me out a little bit, right? I had an interesting email.
Make sure you tell them to share this. You got no love.
From Portugal. And Susan said, Alan Turing, there's a movie made about this cat. It's one of the last films I saw before my diagnosis, but there was a movie made about this guy. He took his own life June 7th, 1954. This guy is kind of like the one of the fathers of computer science, and he used that to break the Enigma code. Very cool movie made about it. Guy spends a lot of time riding a bike. He was also a homosexual, and he was persecuted for this after basically ensuring that the free world would continue. He was prosecuted for being gay. He was also chemically castrated and mocked. And he ended up taking his own life on June 7th, 1954. He did it by using a cyanide capsule and also biting one bite out of an apple. And apparently, Jobs and the people at Apple have said that that was the reason for the bite out of the apple. And you know what? I might buy that. I might. But when you throw in the fact that their first computer was sold for $666.66, now I'm starting to get a little bit dicey. But it's a very difficult thing, isn't it? You know, somebody left a comment the other day in one of the chats. I said, send me an email. I was in my brother's chat. Woman was being very mean to me. And I said, send me an email. I'd love to talk to you one-on-one. She said, I don't have a phone. I'm not of this world. By the way, that woman sent me a video. A video of somebody that I needed to watch. Here we go again. Here you go again. False prophets. A lot of them these days. Terrifying. Watch what you watch. It's a scary time to be on social media. It's a scary time to be on social media. But I do want to tell you another story, because I started this by saying I didn't feel I could add anything to what was said yesterday. And all of you got a laugh out of that, and you should, because I can talk a pit bull off a milk bone, right? I can talk. And I tend to enjoy it. But yesterday, as much as I knew these guys, and for the last, I don't know, 3 weeks, I've been there every Thursday talking to them. So when they said, if anyone else wants to say anything, every guy there went like this and turned and looked at me like, Tommy, you going to say something? I couldn't add anything yesterday. There was a gentleman that I met from the church who got up, and his speech took about 8 seconds. Now, if you're a public speaker, if you watch somebody say something in 8 seconds that literally says everything, that's breathtaking. It really is. But he got up, and what he said was, and his voice was cracking. He was fighting to get through this 8 seconds. He was in the grips of emotion in a way that hope has the ability to do to you. But what he said is, you think we're here to help you guys, right? That we're here to give to you. But the truth is that what we're getting from you is so much more than that. And I'm not exaggerating. It took about 10 seconds to get through. It just took me 2, because the lip was quivering. It was absolutely beautiful. It really was. And it was one of those things where you go, I got to go on after this. I've told the story before about the guy that I went to talk to kids at a rehab center, because when I first got out, I'm trying to figure out what can I do to make the world better. Q really pushed me on this, man, right? You got to go out and you got to use your voice. You got to go out. I didn't know what to do. So I went to a rehab center. I mean, what do they call it? Jail for kids. Help me. Juvenile jail center, named after a famous woman in the town that I lived in. And I went in to do a speech, and there was one other guy, and I looked good. I had on a really nice suit. I was wearing a great watch, and I was ready to do this speech. And across the street was a jail that I had spent so much time in, and it's where these guys were going to go, right? And a guy got up before me, and he said, when I first got out of prison, he was a big dude, big white guy. He said, when I first got out of prison, I was so afraid I was going to relapse and go back onto dope that I went to NA, and I just started cleaning ashtrays and making coffee. And he goes, I just didn't want to leave. I was terrified. You know, I knew if I was in that building, I couldn't get high. But I knew that once I stepped outside that building, I was probably going to get wasted. So I just didn't leave. He said, and I'm not exaggerating, I was there 16 hours the first day I got out of prison. And right at the time they were getting ready to lock the doors, a guy said to him, do you not have a place to go? Come home with me, man. He said, it isn't fancy, but I can set you up with a cot in my garage. He's like, you can have a place to stay, man. He goes, and if you don't have anything to do tomorrow, I'll bring you back here. And he did that for the guy every day for about a week. And as the guy's telling the story, you can see that there's an emotional connection. He goes on for probably 15 or 20 minutes about how this guy gave him a job. And this guy, he got a truck that he drove as part of working for this guy. They did construction. And the crews got bigger. The guy he was working for became really, really successful. And he rose to manager. And then a couple of employees talked him into leaving to start their own business. And the guy that gave him a house, he was going to go and try to compete with. And he did it without any warning or anything else. And the guy said, hey, best of luck. I'm pulling for you. Hope you guys kill it. They failed. Two of them ended up taking money and doing dope. And he said he went back with his tail between his legs. And the guy said to him, nah, go back in the garage. Don't worry about it. He said he went back in that garage for 6 more years until one day the guy came to him and said, I think it's time you move out of my garage, man. And he said, what did I do? You know, how did I offend you? He said, no, you didn't offend me. He said, but you should have your own house. And we just bought a tract of land and we're doing some spec houses. How about if we build one for you? You're the labor that you put in. He's like, that could be your down payment and we'll work with this. Guy got him his own home. And over the course of these 16 or 17 years that he had been there, his 4-year-old daughter had become 20 and was getting ready to go walk down the aisle and wanted him to walk down with her, with her dad. More than an uncle, this convict that the guy brought home. And he said the only thing he ever asked of him was that he remove the ink. He had a big swastika on his throat. He said, you don't have to do it, but if you did one favor, he's like, I'd even pay for it. I just want that ink off you, man. You're better than that. It's not who you are. He would go to church with this guy every Sunday. This changed his life. I mean, not totally. He had a Harley Davidson, right? He still was that dude. But you could barely see the Swazi. He said, I've had 6 sessions, and if you've never had one of these things removed, it's 8 times more painful than having one put on. But he said, I got 2 more sessions, and you're never going to know this was here. And one of the kids in the front row said, why did he want the swastikas off you so bad, man? It's just a gang symbol. And he goes, oh, did I not mention this guy was black? Whew. Not a sound. I couldn't make one. This dude was a hater. He had lightning bolts on one side. He had a big swastika. And those things were bright. They were jumping off of his neck when he first went into that NA meeting. And I'm sure there were a crap load of white guys that said, have a good night. Take it easy. We'll see you at the next one. But a black dude said, you got no place to go? Come home with me. I had to speak after that guy. You know what I mean? Like I had a hell of a presentation ready to go. But I had to speak after that. I swear to you, I got up and spent 45 minutes talking about that. Because I couldn't get over it. I was so blown away. Maybe it was because I had just gotten out. You know what I'm saying? Yesterday, I felt the same way. There was nothing else I could add to that. There was nothing there that I could add that was going to be any better. Everybody said it all perfectly, which is good because I got stung by a bee right before I would have had to speak anyway. It was beautiful. It was absolutely breathtaking. Hope exists, a lot like miracles. But if you're not looking for either of them, you ain't going to see them, I promise. People, my energy level ain't where it's supposed to be. I'm just going to be honest with you. I'll take all the prayers you can get. I think I got a bit of a toxic hangover from that bug and the treatment thereof. But I'm going to be on tonight. Please do me a favor. Between now and the next time I see you, put a little love in your heart. And you know what? Johnny Scoville didn't get stung by a bee yesterday. Catch his show. Should be a better one. I love you guys. We'll see you on the next one. Put a little love in your heart.